Thank you, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. We appreciate you being here today for this important announcement about the resolution, the solving of a particularly heinous case of murder that occurred in Montecito. The victim of this heinous crime was Violet Evelyn Alberts. She was a vibrant 96-year-old widow, a cherished figure in the Montecito community. Despite her age, she had remained active and engaged, and she was known for her warm demeanor and social nature. Following the passing of her husband, David Alberts, in 1993, she sought solace in Santa Barbara, where she began a new chapter of her life. Violet found herself immersed in the beauty of Montecito, where she lived at 909 Park Lane. Without any immediate family nearby, Violet relied on her friendships and connections within the neighborhood, through which she achieved a sense of belonging with a tight-knit community. Her love for her home, complete with a pond filled with cherished koi fish that she brought from Beverly Hills, reflected her appreciation for life's simpler pleasures. Despite facing challenges with her memory and cognition, Violet's spirit remained undaunted. This was evident in her plans to celebrate her upcoming birthday by baking fresh cookies. The ingredients for those cookies were found on the table when, on May 27th of 2022, the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office responded to a distressing call to check on Violet Alberts' welfare. Albert's caretaker had made an alarming discovery, prompting members of the Sheriff's Office to investigate the circumstances surrounding her murder. When patrol deputies and later detectives arrived at the scene, they found Violet dead in her bed. They also found a shattered window adjacent to the rear door of the residence, indicating sinister intent behind her tragic death. A subsequent autopsy conducted by the Coroner's Bureau pathologist unveiled the grim reality of Albert's death. The cause of her death was asphyxiation, and the manner of her death was determined to be homicide. With the revelation of the murder, the investigation began and intensified, delving deeper into the events leading up to Albert's fatal encounter. The Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office detectives immediately set about solving this case. With meticulous attention to detail, they pursued leads tirelessly, navigating the many intricacies of a case that initially seemed shrouded in mystery. While some parts of the investigation required constraints on public disclosure, the relentless pursuit of justice remained paramount and drove the investigative team to developing the case and moving forward in their quest for resolution and justice. The case was revealed to be a tangled, evil web of financial exploitation against the victim. Pauline Macareno emerged as a central figure in the manipulation and deceitful targeting of 96-year-old Violet Alberts. In 2020, Macareno capitalized on Albert's vulnerability, engaging in financial elder abuse that ultimately led to the fraudulent acquisition of her property. Through deceptive means, Macareno orchestrated a series of transactions, including forging documents and establishing fraudulent entities to gain control over Albert's assets unlawfully. Detectives also uncovered evidence that Violet had been targeted in a murder-for-hire scheme. They obtained evidence of a scouting trip that was conducted by two suspects, Ricardo Martin Del Campo and Henry Rostomian, on the evening of May the 24th, 2022. This pivotal discovery shed light on the premeditated nature of this crime, underscoring the perpetrator's calculated efforts to survey Albert's home and to plan their vicious and reprehensible actions. The discovery of this trip established the deliberate intent between the events leading up to Albert's untimely death, and they reinforced the necessity for deliberate and continued thorough investigative measures. In June of 2023, in the wake of this tragic murder, the Sheriff's Office issued several public appeals urging anyone with information about the suspected getaway vehicle, which had been captured on surveillance cameras in Montecito, to come forward with information. We also offered a reward of $10,000 for information leading to the arrest and the identification of those responsible for her murder. Through meticulous analysis and collaboration, law enforcement pieced together crucial details surrounding the sequence of events that ultimately culminated in Violet Albert's murder. This pursuit of justice yielded significant breakthroughs, culminating in a series of arrests that illuminated the scheme behind Violet Albert's murder. Pauline Macareno, the mastermind behind the financial exploitation of this victim, faced charges relating to elder abuse, fraud, and manipulation of legal documents. Harry Basmagian, Henry Rostomian, and Ricardo Martin del Campo were implicated in the conspiracy to murder Violet Albert, facing charges ranging from murder to conspiracy and solicitation of murder. The arrests occurred in the following sequence. Pauline Macareno was arrested on June the 6th, 2022, and again on June the 8th, 2022, for her involvement in the financial elder abuse crimes against the victim. Harry Basmagian was arrested on January the 2nd, 2024, for his involvement in the conspiracy to murder Violet Alberts. Henry Rostomian was arrested on February 27th for conspiracy to murder and murder charges. And lastly, Ricardo Martin del Campo was arrested on March the 5th, 2024. It's worth noting that when Del Campo was arrested, he attempted to flee from the arresting officers. And in the process, he and an associate who was with him discarded firearms. Those firearms were recovered, and Del Campo's firearm was determined to be a Glock semi-automatic pistol that had been illegally modified with an illicit part to turn it into a machine pistol, a machine gun. And it had a 30-round magazine in the weapon at the time of its recovery. Pauline Macareno was recently sentenced to 6 years in state prison for fraud related to Violet Albert's case. She is pending additional charges. Henry Rostomian and Ricardo Martin del Campo are currently being held in the Santa Barbara County Jail without bail on charges of murder and conspiracy to murder Violet Alberts. Henry Basmagian was arrested for conspiracy to murder while being held in federal custody in Los Angeles on an unrelated charge. He subsequently suffered a life-threatening medical emergency that left him totally incapacitated, essentially brain dead, with a grim prognosis. We'd like to ask anyone that may have any additional information about this case to give us a call, to recognize that we still seek additional information as we move forward. You can do that by contacting our detectives at 805-681-4150, or you can call anonymously at our WeTip line, 805-681-4171. There are a lot of people and a lot of allied agencies that need to be thanked today for some extraordinary police work that ultimately resulted in the solving of this case. The unwavering support and cooperation of allied agencies, including the Santa Barbara District Attorney's Office investigators, the Los Angeles Police Department, the Glendale Police Department, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the United States Marshals Service were all instrumental in this investigation's success. But the acknowledgement and the gratitude needs to be primarily focused on the diligent efforts of the men who are standing on either side of me today. Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office homicide detectives, whose collective dedication, determination, and tenacity served to pursue truth and accountability for those responsible for Violet Albert's murder. In total, to date, 10,424.5 hours have been spent by our detectives alone in the investigation to unravel the complex web surrounding Violet Albert's tragic murder. And I just want to say, I am now in my 47th year in the law enforcement profession. And this case is the finest example that I have ever seen of a whodunit murder with absolutely no information up front being solved due to the tenacious and unrelenting efforts of detectives. It's an example of outstanding police work, and today I want to especially thank the following men. To my right, your left, Sergeant Daniel Coley, who was the initial lead detective in this case. In the midst of the case, he had the good fortune to be promoted to sergeant, which unfortunately took him away from the Criminal Investigations Bureau. He was replaced by Detective Ruben Esparza, to his left. And Ruben was appointed as the lead detective in the case. Detective Matt Maxwell worked alongside Detective Esparza as a co-lead. Additional detectives that worked on this case included, to my right, Adam Allegria, and to my left, Joaquin Oliver and Cliff Cabasag. The supervising sergeant and the ringmaster of this investigation throughout was Sergeant Jeff McDonald. And the case manager throughout was Lieutenant Juan Camarena. The division commander, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today, was Commander Eric Rainey. Together they did an extraordinary job, carrying on an extraordinary tradition that the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Criminal Investigation Bureau has. It's worth noting that the motto and the emblem of the Criminal Investigation Bureau for the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office dates back to the medieval era. During the Middle Ages, when a kingdom would experience vicious, evil deaths, the people of the town attributed such horrible deaths to the work of a mythical animal known as a dragon. The people demanded that the king send the best knights to find and destroy the dragon. In essence, the dragon became synonymous with evil. Bruce Carell, a former detective commander, and chief deputy for the sheriff's office, created a symbol of the dragon, and that symbol to this day remains as the sheriff's office investigation emblem, along with the motto, "Never let the dragon win." This motto represents the challenges that each detective faces in his or her work, and it is a reminder of their tireless efforts to seek justice for victims. Let me close this press briefing with a caveat. To any individual, criminal, or criminal enterprise that may be contemplating coming to Santa Barbara to commit crimes, if you come here and if you target members of our community, no matter who they are, we will doggedly investigate the crimes that you commit. We will identify you, all of you. We will hunt you down. We will arrest you. We will jail you. We will build a comprehensive case against you, and we will bring you before the bar of justice, just as we have done in this case. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That will conclude my briefing. If there's any questions that we can entertain, we can do so now.
You said that you still want information from the public. Any additional information would be useful. What gaps are missing that you still need filled in this case?
I wouldn't say that any gaps are missing per se. We have a very solid case that has been put together. But there's always the ability for people with additional information to add to that and perhaps result in another avenue of investigation that could disclose something else. But we just are interested in making a strong case even stronger.
Sheriff, can you talk about the relationship between Macareno and the victim? Was she a caregiver? How did she earn the trust of the victim?
She was not the caregiver. She was referred to the victim and essentially took advantage of the victim's age and cognitive abilities. The victim was in a financially distressful situation where she had essentially aged out of her savings, and she basically had a very valuable home that she lived in, but she had run out of money other than her Social Security. And she needed some additional money, and she was approached by Pauline Macareno with a scheme to sell her a reverse mortgage. It was a reverse mortgage that was not typically what you would find from a financial institution per se. It was one that was put together financially, and in the process of doing that, she forged documents, forged signatures, and basically took extreme advantage of Violet.
So is the thought that the murder was involved in maybe trying to cover this up? Because if Macareno had already tapped in and accessed all of her information and was basically stealing from her anyway, what would be the motivation?
I don't think I want to go there right now with that, but there was obviously motivation to murder her. Let me just put it this way: in the eyes of Pauline Macareno, Miss Alberts was living too long. In other words, I think the assumption was that she was 96, going on 97. She would probably die quickly, and then she would have obtained this home through fraudulent means. And so the acceleration of her death is presumably what was behind the murder.
Can you talk about the relationship between her and the suspects that were arrested for conspiracy for murder?
I don't think we want to go there at this point. That'll all come out as the case unfolds in court.
Is this part of a broader issue of financial elder abuse in Santa Barbara County, or is this case kind of a one-off of what you've seen in the past?
This case is certainly an extreme example of it to the nth degree. But there are, unfortunately, oftentimes there's victimization of elderly victims who are preyed upon by others in a variety of different financial ways. That happens in our county from time to time, but it's not just confined to us, obviously. It's a national, probably international problem that exists.
What can residents do to make sure themselves or their family members don't fall victim to these schemes?
Yeah, it's very important that family members, caregivers, are aware of the person's finances, and if there's any suspicious activity, if there's a withdrawing of funds from a financial institution, or if there's any indication that something that sounds too good to be true is happening, is when all the warning bells should go off, and everyone should really take a deep look at what is occurring to make sure that that person is not being taken advantage of.
When it comes to, I know you emphasized justice, did the victim have any family members or anyone where there's some form of justice that can be served for the actual, relatives of the victim involved?
The short answer is she did not have any immediate family. members. She did have I believe, a nephew, a distant relative that lived on the East Coast. And that's something that the detectives determined and found out, that she was essentially someone who wasn't supported by a family, an immediate family, or have them in the area. And in essence, these men here besides me became her family. They made it a point to make it as though she was a member of their own family, that they were going to do everything within their grasp, everything within their power to find and bring to justice those who were responsible for her death.
And then what made you go through great lengths on this case in particular? I mean, there are a lot of other cases. There are, other deaths in the county. Why did this case receive the amount of attention that it did?
Well, fortunately, there aren't necessarily a lot of other deaths in our county. We have a relatively low murder rate in Santa Barbara County. This case has gone on for 2 years. It was an unsolved murder. A relative rarity in this day and age, something that is always a primary consideration for law enforcement to do all we can do to investigate a whodunit murder. And this was an incredibly challenging one, and one that, in addition to other cases on their caseload, these men made a priority and continued to move on this, and their efforts are really why we're standing here today making this announcement.
And any information as to the sentencing of the perpetrators of the crime?
The only one that's been sentenced thus far is Pauline Macarena for her role in the financial crimes against this victim. And the remaining suspects will be, they've been arraigned, and they will be ultimately tried on those charges of murder and conspiracy to commit murder.
As the investigation unfolds, will you be seeking additional charges against Pauline Macarena?
That remains to be seen.
Do we know if this is the first time Macarena has done a fraud scheme like this?
In Santa Barbara County, yes, it's the
In
first
Santa
time.
Barbara County?
Correct, yes.
Does she have a prior criminal record? Macarena?
I'll let Detective Maxwell speak to that.
She does have a prior record that consists mostly of financial crimes and convictions.
In terms of the investigation process, what was the main thing that led you to figuring out who the perpetrators of the crime were? Was it like some sort of forensic investigation? What led you on this route to find 3 people who were all connected in this triangular
Sure.
scheme?
There were certainly technological parts to this case, the surveillance photo of the suspect vehicle, the determination of what type of vehicle it was, the effort that went into determining where was that actual vehicle, who was it connected to, that sort of thing. All of that comes about really as a result of old-fashioned detective work, police work, process of trial and elimination of theories, the process of digging into the evidence that we have and putting together a case. And so really, I think the ultimate credit has to go to detective work rather than technology or forensics in this case. Obviously, we did a full forensic workup at the crime scene when we discovered that Mrs. Alberts had been murdered. Throughout, these men have been supported by our forensic unit that has assisted them. But really, again, I think the key takeaway from this case is this was solved as a result of some outstanding detective work.
And was there one thing in particular that was almost like a tipping point to solve the case that would be a part of that outstanding work that you want to reference? One of the detectives, and I know it was a joint effort, but was there one thing that was a really unique way of solving this murder case?
Yeah, I would think that it was a series of things. There were certain key parts to the investigation that resulted in in additional things, but I don't know, is there a tipping point in particular? Or?
I would say it was just a culmination of things that led to one after another. So it was constantly chasing lead after lead, and so multiple avenues that we pursued is what led to the success of it.
And that's how these cases work. You know, you can pursue, and come up empty-handed for months, even years at a time. And then you can finally get one piece of information that in and of itself is the key to opening the lock that gets you to those other pieces of information down the line.
And was there that one piece of information?
Well, I think there were several of
Okay.
those that really led them to basically conduct, almost parallel investigations from the financial crimes as well as the actual murder itself.
Was the community helpful at all? I know you sought community input.
There was certainly help in terms of community surveillance camera footage that was reviewed, lots of it that was reviewed, and that ultimately gave us the indication that this vehicle was the one that was suspicious and that we had focused in on. So certainly that is a local community asset that we've had, the fact that there's a lot of surveillance cameras in Montecito. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time and for reporting on this outstanding case.